I moved to New York a few years later, and I moved there. Yes. It was that I remember because it was 1994, and it was the 25th anniversary of the riots. It was also the gay games were going on at the same time. So it was this like giant, huge queer party, and I got there like on the Friday night. I remember it was a Thursday, and it had just started. We went to the Roxy that first evening, and I don't remember what drugs I took because, like I said, I'm your queer elder. But it was fabulous. It was fabulous. Debbie Harry was there dressed as Marilyn Monroe. And I was just like, Blondie, blah, 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 blah. And she just went, yeah. She couldn't pay me any attention. It was fabulous. I didn't care. She's totally snubbed me. But the day of the parade, maybe it was, there was this big party on the Intrepid, which is docked out there in the Hudson. It was fantastic. And I think we took ecstasy or mushroom. Like again, I can't remember. We took a lot of stuff. And I was having the best time of my life. I met some really, really cute guy from Ohio. We were making out on the dance floor while Patti LuPone was singing the national anthem and the Empire State Building was lavender. And I was like, yes, I have arrived. Thank you, New York City. Thank you, New York City. The second year, I ended up taking too much ecstasy or something, and I kind of like had to go home early. But Cyndi Lauper was singing while I was like passing out next to an Aquafina truck. I was like, ugh. So that one wasn't as much fun as the first one. But Pride is really special, and I hope that I don't pass out this Saturday at the festival. But I would like to make out with a cute guy from Ohio, hopefully. That was my first few prides there. We are going to bring up our next speaker, Tales of Pride. Our next performer likes to blend all sorts of performative mediums into wild and pulsating public projects. I love alliteration. Let's say that again. Pulsating public projects. Oh. But often just ends up rolling around on tarps with fruit. I've done that act myself. I have. Here to tell a story that might connect a few dots. Please make some noise for Greer Sikes.
Hello. I'm Greer. My pronouns are Zer. So, as the world burns, I find that I can at least be thankful for safe spaces such as these to explore and express our queer identities. But when I was growing up, finding a queer space, much less a queer city, was akin to finding Narnia. This is a tale of my Narnia, also known as Provincetown, Rhode Island. A place where towers are built of tampons, where drag queens drive dune buggies, and the place where I met my first real-life bearded lady. So I was born and raised in a well-worn notch of the Bible Belt. Specifically, I was raised in the suburbs of Dallas, and thank you, I appreciate it. At the behest of my WASP family, I became a poster child for your typical 4-person, good conservative Christian family. So the home, church, community, and school spaces which I occupied growing up pretty much adopted a very militaristic mentality. And what I mean by that was they pretty much said, don't say gay. The first time I heard the word lesbian, I was 11 years old. I remember on the car ride back to my house, asking my parents, what's a lesbian? And I can still see the look that they gave one another that day. It's that look that parents give each other when their kids ask for the first time, is Santa Claus like actually real? They knew that the illusion had been shattered. So one summer, my family decided to spend our our vacation time outside of our white picket fence in Cape Cod on the East Coast. I'm getting a little bit lost here. I'm a little nervous. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Anyway, so we decided to go to Cape Cod one summer. And it was a family vacation that we had planned with another family, although I don't remember anything about this other family. I don't know how we knew them. I don't know how long we knew them. I don't even remember their name. But I do remember one of the daughters of the family because she introduced me that summer to both PETA and But I'm a Cheerleader. So for those who are unfamiliar with the organization or the movie, both deal with animals being held in captivity. So my introduction to PETA happened one day while the parents were away and the girl and I decided to play, but not like that, not yet. I was entering into my nihilistic emo phase in school, and that's kind of where we both aligned. See, like me, she wore way too many rubber bracelets, but unlike me, she also wore way too much eyeliner. So this angsty activist I knew was a kindred spirit. And the weird thing was she was actually not afraid to express her opinions. She was actually allowed to have beliefs and thoughts that went against her parents and even her community. She was, to me, a new kind of beast I'd yet to encounter within my own captivity. She was going to educate me. See, the PETA girl was sure to bring plenty of literature with her. One day, she showed me a pamphlet that forever changed me because it showed me a reality that I still want to pretend doesn't exist. That day, I imbibed dozens of images of chickens stuffed in cages with their beaks sliced off. The reason they slice chickens' beaks off is so that they don't peck each other to death because they're so cramped inside their cages. There were plenty of other images in the PETA pamphlets, which I'm not going to burden the visual thinkers amongst us with, but those images of the chickens are what really stuck with me that day. To think anyone thought that the solution to keeping animals in cages was to take away their personal power. To think. Later that night, as I sat in the vacation rental watching But I'm a Cheerleader with my new pal, I remember being transfixed by the cages that these bad homosexuals were being sent to. They were such vibrant, colorful, luscious spaces in which to be neutralized. A beautiful setting for cutting off the beaks of chickens. Fresh upon witnessing my first queer film, I woke up the next day ready and eager for our family's day trip to Provincetown. I was 12 at the time, but quite mature for my age, according to the adults around me. So when we got to the town, I immediately eyed a bookstore and was given permission to go wander off on my own. Hi, bookstore. So downtown P-Town's not very large, hence being allowed to wander off a little bit on my own. And the reason I actually felt drawn to this bookstore was because of that glorious rainbow rectangle hanging outside of it. I'm pretty sure it was the first store I ever saw in my life with a pride flag. And as that beautiful rainbow was waving in the wind and the wind chimes were, what's a good word? Chiming behind it. It was almost like a siren lulling me into the bookstore. And that's not the main character in my story. It's not where I met the bearded lady. But I'm just mentioning it because it's the first store that I ever bought a religious book that didn't have to do with Christianity. It was actually a book by the Dalai Lama at the time. So next up in Provincetown was a cute little museum featuring local art, most of them being watercolors of city oceanscapes and the like. But my favorite piece, the piece that may have given my child self permission to be anything other than a good little Christian girl, was a tower made out of tampons. Specifically, used tampons. Hell yeah. Here she was, before me, an artist and her intimacy, her boldness and revolt against conformity, a celebration of the uncouth, and the realization of the beauty of what we've been told to believe is bad. For millennia, the magic of uterus-having bodies had been caged in shame and silence. My own body was something I felt ashamed of my entire childhood because I thought that it was the one thing keeping me from being perfect. But maybe, I thought, there wasn't just one way to be a woman in society. Up next was perhaps my favorite part of the day, but also not where I met the bearded lady. You see, this was also the day I was going to meet my first ever drag queen. A real-life cross-dresser and performer, glamoring stages by night and cracking dad jokes and Budweisers by day. I don't remember the moment that we met, but I can still feel my heart race with excitement every time I imagine him. It kind of feels like how I feel standing up here on the stage right now. He was an animal who had escaped his cage. Our dune buggy tour guide was an older man, a little less than 6 feet tall, with rubbery tan skin from days spent under the sun and a freshly shaved head to hide his age. He was wearing a hot pink shirt, which was crazy enough for my conservative crew. But as my gaze traveled down his arms, I noticed dozens of silver bangles all the way from wrist to elbow on both arms. And at the tips of his hands were 2-inch-long hot pink nails. He was what I knew I wanted to be someday, as free as the world would let me be. My dune buggy drag queen is still one of the most special people I've ever met in my life. They will always be a saint to me. But my savior that day came in a much different form. It wasn't until I met her that I felt like there might be somewhere, someday, a place in the world where I belong to. That was the day I met my first real-life bearded lady. Now, this may surprise you, but at the ripe age of 12, I had never been to a piercing parlor or tattoo shop in my life. Well, my ears were pierced, but I did that at the mall at a Claire's like a good millennial. You know. And I certainly, by that time, had digested enough stigma and judgment about the types of people who go to tattoo parlors and get piercings from my family and community to imagine that what I was walking into was perhaps a living nightmare. I wondered what would be on the other side of that shop door. Would it be fantastical creatures? Legions of the derelict? Freaks of myth and lore? What was going to happen when I stepped beyond the threshold into another world? When I opened the dark blue painted door, I entered into a brightly lit space with sparse white walls. It was small and quite nondescript. There were fluorescent lights above me and cheap linoleum below me. In fact, it was about as boring as it could be. That is, until I saw the overalls. Towering above me was a figure, large-bodied in shape and staggering in height, wearing full-length denim overalls. This must be the man who works at the shop, I thought. For a minute, I began to wonder, is the bearded lady just a clever name for the shop and not an actual indication of what I'm going to find when I open the door to Narnia? But then the overalls made a 180, and suddenly I was face to face with the bearded lady. Standing before me in all their glory was something I had been told was both a myth and a menace. A person who dared to defy the conventions of what society told them they were supposed to be. That was, I hoped, just like my dune buggy drag queen, going to be me someday. As I stood there looking up at my Aslan, and for those of you who aren't nerds, Aslan is basically Jesus in the Narnia books, I realized why I'd felt so drawn to a shop called the Bearded Lady Tattoo Parlor. I wanted to know if she was real or just a hoax. And upon discovering her existence, I discovered another level of reality hidden in plain sight within this one, a reality called queer freedom. My own queer journey has taken many twists and turns over time. But these first encounters of wild queers gave me my first taste of permission to be who I am, whoever that is. To stop conforming, minimizing, hiding, and shaving. As a matter of fact, I don't shave an inch of hair on my beautiful natural body anymore. Except for one place. Can you guess? My face. You see, that might be another thing that I sensed when I was drawn towards the bearded lady's shop. She really was my kindred. My facial hair is the only thing that I actually shave on a daily basis. And sometimes I don't shave it. Sometimes I let people feel the stubble. Sometimes I grow it out for a week and I do a performance art piece about it. It's my body, it's my choice. Although I was too afraid to have much of an interaction with the bearded lady that day, just seeing them and the 4 inches of sparse woolly hair protruding from their chin gave me the courage I needed to leave that Narnia and return to the real world. Out here in Heteroland, I still think about the tampon tower and the dune buggy drag queen and the bearded lady whenever I start to feel a little bit like a cramped chicken. Thank you.
Make a lot of noise for Greer Sikes! Greer, I want to know about the Dune Buggy Drag Queen. Do you remember their stage name?
I wish I could.
Oh, I bet
That was
they
so
were
long ago.
fabulous. I bet
Yeah.
they were fabulous.